Hello, ladies and gentlemen, how are you? I am Carlos Emmanuel Ludio Flores, and I'm going to talk about things to God. How was the evolution of the Roman laws? But we're going to focus anymore in things that were structural on the stages of the Roman laws. But we're going to focus on the things of the Roman laws institutions that are applied today, had all this investment that Rome created, making it apply for all these extensions. Because if you know, in all these parts, or maybe the majority, is applied the Roman law system or the Napoleonic Code advantage that he had. For example, Egypt has a mixed system of the Roman laws and the Muslim laws. These parts are different because of the religious things, but for example, Greece, Macedon, Italy, Spain, France, these parts from here, these parts from the north of Africa are applying the codified law of Rome. Not in the case also of Britain, because Britain is an island and they are applying the common law system, and it's very different. Nothing to do with this. Okay? We're going to focus now on the sources of the Pater Potesty. The Pater Potesty was the one that was applied by the Pater and Pilus families, that were the only ones that could have all this situation of the patrimony. And there were three types of sources. The first one was the marriage, in which the spousal, that was the woman, was now in charge of the situation beneath the pater families. After that, the adoption, the kids were adopted by the matrimony or the marriage. And after that, their legitimation. Why is this? Because this legitimation was applied 300 days after the marriage. The sons that were born 300 days after the marriage, and before 180 days before the situation of the divorce. Why? Because after the marriage was applied, 300 days needed to pass for the kids to be legitimated, and also 180 days needed to be before the dissolution of this thing, because the marriage can be dissolved in the divorce. So before the 180 days were completed, the sons that were born in that period of time were legitimate sons. We're going to focus now in the moral persons. The moral persons are not the persons in a physical way and speak and live. They are associations or societies of two or more people, so that they can pursue a specific objective in which they were applied. First, the foundations. These were only talking about the good in common, the situations of beneficency, and all the attitudes of the church and the ecclesiastical way. They are not going after the money. The associations are the ones that were in the other line in which they were pursuing money, like the enterprises of today. We're going to focus now in the next thing about the children legitimation. And we already saw the days that needed to pass 300 days after the marriage and before the 180 days completement to be legitimated sons under the Pater Potesty of the Pater families or the Pilus families. It depends on the evolution in which period we're going to focus. And also the Stiae Nuptiae. What was the Stiae Nuptiae? The Stiae Nuptiae was the promise of marriage between the spouses. The men needed to have 14 years and the woman 12 years, because we're talking about this maturity and the conveniences of the families. And we're going to show the divorce or the impediments of the marriage. First, the impediments of the marriage were this. The people that were not citizens in Rome couldn't have this marital union of the marriage. They could have the concubinate or the concubinated, but they couldn't have this. Also, the social and economic differences were decisively to not join the spouses. Also, the patricians and plebeians couldn't have between them this marriage. The descendants of the governor of a province, for example, Egypt, couldn't be in a marriage to another people in the same province. And also the biological spouses. Nothing of incest was allowed in that period of time. And we need to know the marriage effect and the dissolutions. Obviously, the marriage effect was the reproduction, as it was in Mexico. This marriage was in that situation because they wanted to have all these things, and the dissolutions were the next ones. The four types of dissolutions were the both agreement of the two spouses. Also, when a person caused it, when another one promulgated, was sanctioned, that was the third one. And the fourth one were when the circumstances disturbs the continuation of this marriage. So we already saw how the dissolutions of the marriage effect, the impediments of the marriage, and all these situations that were applied in ancient Rome. Thanks to God, God bless you, thank you.